were lured into the family barn through the stables where they were murdered one at a time using a mattock, which is basically like an ice pick.
Murders, mysteries, unexplained stories, and our family's crazy opinions on them all. Join us now. The Family School of Thought is in session.
Hey, everybody. Hope everybody had a good week. Welcome back to our show. I'm glad to see everybody out there because I can see you all. Well, welcome to the Family School of Thought. So how about you folks? You guys doing good? Cass, weather's what out in Portland?
Weather's nice out here compared to you guys. I heard you guys have a storm coming.
Oh, no, we have one. The schools have already been canceled.
Yeah, it was kind of cold here today, too. It was 40 degrees and sunny. Had to wear a jacket.
Oh, my.
We were like 50s yesterday.
Really?
Yeah, we had really windy, though.
Windy, yeah.
The last 2 days, it was 40s and 50s, and then we have 30. It's cold. Spring one day, winter the next. You know, it's Michigan weather.
Yeah, there's another quick tidbit right there. Odin had a very rough day yesterday because his arm got shut in the door from the wind slamming the car door on his arm, and then he was sick all night. So
poor baby.
Poor kid had a rough 24 hours.
My baby.
All right, Jess, you got some facts for us?
Yeah, so I have the history, unexplained mysteries. I have a tidbit from that. I also have a tidbit from our listener out in Texas that it's a Reader's Digest, 125 interesting facts about practically everything. So it's kind of like a news article. So I think I might do one of those every once in a while too. So, but the history, unexplained mysteries. Maybe you guys know about this. We're not big hockey like us for hockey people, but our family is
Let's go Red
big
Wings.
Hockey stuff. Yeah. So this is about the missing Stanley Cup puck. So in 2010, in overtime of Game 6, the Stanley Cup during the Stanley Cup playoffs between the Chicago Blackhawks and the Philadelphia Flyers, the Blackhawks player Patrick Kane sank a game-winning goal, earning his team their first Stanley Cup since 1961. As the buzzer announced their victory and the stands erupted, however, the game-winning puck vanished, and it has been missing ever since. The search for the puck of Blackhawks, it's the 6-ounce rubber chunk of Blackhawks history. I don't know what that is. I can't
see that. Yeah.
Oh, he's watching the Red Wings on his phone. Okay.
Every time we do this show, I'm getting Red Wing texts the entire time we're watching it. And so when you said we're not very big Red Wings fans, I'm like, kind of.
Yeah, kind
of.
of.
How many games have you been to, Dad? Do you know where the Stanley Cup puck
Lately,
is?
I know. Not very many.
Okay.
No.
So, but the search for the Blackhawks history puck, the 6-ounce rubber chunk, has been intense with the National Hockey League, the NHL. They even recruited the FBI to aid them to hunt this puck down. I thought it was kind of ridiculous too. But despite the FBI's involvement, no trace has been uncovered, and a $50,000 reward still stands for any information leading to the puck's recovery.
Well, maybe one of our watchers will know where it's at, and they can share that.
No, that puck is a dog's chew toy, long been dead chew toy. There's just no way.
Or either that or Patrick Kane grabbed it real quick and said, I'm not giving this back. I made history. It's mine.
Yeah, I would.
But recently, the FBI team dedicated to the hunt announced that they would be employing cutting-edge video microscopes to analyze footage from the goal in hope to turn up some evidence. but many believe the puck is lost forever and perhaps on a trophy shelf at some lucky fan's house.
Yeah.
You know it's one of the players because nobody else was on the field, the ice.
Yeah, well, you never know, but I think, that stuff like this happens where, the person hits a home run or whatever and makes a game-winning thing, and the fans aren't giving it back. That's theirs forever. But with this, I think Patrick King may have grabbed it real quick, or the goalie who got by grabbed it real quick, and that's the dog's chew toy.
That's the dog's chew toy.
It becomes such an issue getting the FBI involved. Whoever has it, they're not giving up that they have it anymore.
Maybe the FBI should.
Wait, now where's our for entertainment purposes only sign? Because we can't be blaming people that the FBI is involved with.
So my other fun little fact, and these ones are kind of shorter, so I thought maybe I'll read a couple of them every once in a while. Again, it's a Reader's Digest, 125 interesting facts about practically everything. This information is the world's oldest wooden wheel has been around for more than 5,000 years.
It's our chandelier up north.
Yeah.
It's our window.
It was founded in 2002, approximately 12 miles south of the capital of Sylvania. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. There's too many consonants in there. And is now housed in the city's museum. It's a radiocarbon dating, which was used to determine the wheel's age, which is somewhere between 5,100 and 5,350 years old. So
older than Christ.
It's closer to home. These are the oldest tourist attractions in every state. So there you go.
The first wheel.
The first wooden wheel. The oldest wooden wheel that has ever been found is between 5,100 years old and 5,350 years old.
Wow. Interesting.
Yep. There you go.
I want to see what it looks like.
There's a wooden wheel.
Okay. Anything else, Jess?
Nope, that's it.
All right.
Those are my fun facts.
Cass, got a song for us this week?
I do. I have a song for us this week, and it's a sad song, but it's an unexpected sad song. And I don't know if any of you, well, some of you might know it, but it is Outkast's Hey Ya.
We all know that song.
When
your mother insisted that they were going to do a free concert. Remember that?
No. I wouldn't even expect Mom to know who Andre 3000 is.
Your mother insisted they were doing a free concert. And I'm like, they're not doing a free concert.
Well, they didn't do a free concert in, Michigan. I can promise that. But so this is actually considered a very dance song. A lot of people play it at weddings again. But it is a pretty sad song when you listen to the lyrics. And a lot of people nowadays on Twitter and TikTok are calling it one of the saddest songs they've ever heard. And it's because the whole song is about how people nowadays in modern relationships are so afraid of being alone that they will stay in relationships that they don't want to be in anymore. And one of the biggest clues to this is after the lyric, we are so in denial when we know we're not happy here. And then Andre says the line, y'all don't even want to hear me, you just want to dance. And it points out that people don't want to actually listen to lyrics. They don't want to actually understand the meaning of the lyrics because it's got such a catchy beat behind it.
Right. Yeah, I've heard this before. That's a great song.
It's a great song, but it is about how hard modern relationships are and how hard it is to be alone sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
So it's funny that it gets played at weddings and celebratory things.
It's such an upbeat tempo to it that you don't think you're not paying attention to the words, but
right.
That was a good song.
And Andre knows this.
Yeah.
But that's the song for the week. Just kind of Again, another one where you've got to pay attention to the lyrics or you don't understand the song.
I just want the music. That's it. I don't. I just like the noise.
Awesome.
I don't listen to the music.
You should.
Just the beat. I listen to the beat.
Well,
And it's got to be a mellow beat, not a.
Hey, so how about? Did you guys all get to see the Super Bowl?
Yes.
No.
Because speaking of music, I was up north with a group of people that none of them knew who Rihanna was. So
Mom, do you know who Rihanna is?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yes.
Name a song by Rihanna.
I don't know her.
Better have my money.
You
You asking me? I know all of her songs.
I'm asking Mom.
No, I don't know her music, but I know who she is, but I don't listen to her. Danielle knew all the songs. But
I thought they were all good, and she did a good job. It was a very different. No, Jess, did you guys see it?
Yes, we watched it, and Matt was like, "What songs does she have?" She like, and he was saying too, like she only became famous because she did the duets with Eminem. And I'm like, no, she was way famous before him. And then when he was going out, yeah, and when she was doing her show, he's like, "Oh, yeah, I guess you were right." And he's like, "Yeah, I guess I didn't realize these were all Rihanna songs."
Yeah.
Or Rihanna.
yeah. And I don't listen to her, so I mean, it was okay, and
I thought it was good.
I wasn't.
But I was with a bunch of people that were like, that was really underwhelming. I'm like, are you kidding me?
What?
I wasn't.
I didn't even watch it, and I knew that was a pretty good show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was good.
Though I will have to say that she didn't play my favorite song, which is Shy Ronnie from SNL. Shy Ronnie.
That would have been great, ringing out Lonely.
That wasn't one of her greatest hits. She did all of her greatest hits.
After the I had to play them "Love on the Brain" and "Stay." They were like, "Oh yeah, I've heard those songs." Yeah. It's like, yeah, she's had a lot of hit songs.
She's got a lot of hits.
Yeah. That's what Matt was like, like names. I mean, I'm not a big, like, I don't listen to her music too much, but I'm like, I knew she had a lot of hits. So Matt's like, name all of her songs. I'm like, I don't know. Umbrella. That's the only one I can like think of right now. But
on the replay.
I do think it was pretty impressive that she did the whole thing by herself. I kept waiting for somebody to, come in, but.
Well, and for her to be pregnant
on that ledge, yeah.
Yeah,
that's what I was worried about. I didn't even watch it, and I was like, "Oh."
She was tethered,
I know,
but still, they were wobbling.
Yeah, they were. But still.
Over, I mean, easily.
Well, you saw the backup dancer fall over, didn't
you? He almost fell over. Yeah.
No, I didn't.
He didn't actually fall off. He almost fell off.
No, he fell down.
Oh wow.
No,
I didn't catch that. But anyways, it was pretty good. I liked it. How about the commercials? Anybody, you guys like the commercials?
No.
My favorite was the pre-electric. What was it? It's about the electric cars coming, and how people are so worried about all the things. I'm like, oh my god, it was awesome, and they made it look like a
I see a
commercial for like Viagra or something. So it was couples talking about how they're worried about, what they call it, electrification vehicles,
Mm.
Anyways,
I like the YouTube, the U2 commercial with all the floating spheres in the sky and everything.
Oh yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah.
Oh wait. These aren't just, they're not other countries trying to spy on us. It's just U2 announcing their next tour.
Yeah.
It's either that or they put it on Apple Play already.
Yeah, right.
It's already downloaded onto your phone.
Anyways, before we get started, please, everybody, push that like button. We'd appreciate it. Subscribe to our channel. We'd appreciate that even more. And share with your friends and acquaintances where you heard us from. Whether it's YouTube or Spotify, anywhere where you get your podcasts.
Read.
Yeah. So and with that, I think Jessie, you're up this week.
It is my week.
All right.
So I have another family murder mystery.
We're going on roll. This is the third week in a row.
I know. But
I had somebody ask me if they could be a guest on our show. Ooh. And I said, oh, yeah, you can. And so they wanted to do another topic, hunting. I'm like, no, it's got to be a murder or mystery. You got to come.
Is it a mysterious hunting?
That's yeah.
We can change up.
Anyways, I'm sorry, Jess. Go ahead.
So this is, and I got this idea, just so everybody knows, I got this idea from my history calendar, the Unexplained Mysteries. This one is the story or the mystery of the Hinterkaifeck Murders. Hinterkaifeck. It's I'm going to butcher a lot of this. My accent is going to be bad, but this is a murder that happened back in 1922 in a small Bavarian farmstead located about 43 miles north of Munich in Germany. And I already said it happened in 1922, and it still remains an unknown and who murdered the family. So it was 6 victims that were murdered. They were all family. It was Andreas Gerber and his wife, and I'm not going to pronounce her name right, but it's Kazela Gerber. And then they lived with their daughter, Victoria Gabrielle, and her 2 children, Kalzea as well. There's a younger one, and Joseph. The 2 kids were 7 and 2, and Victoria was 35, and her father was 63, and her mother was 72. So there's that age difference for you. I thought that was kind of odd, but unrelated. And then as well as their maid, Maria Baumgardner, who was 44. And the people, the eerie, there's a lot of eerie things that happen with this one, but one of the most eerie things about this case is that there's evidence to prove, show during the investigation that the person or people who murdered the 6 family members lived with their corpses for 3 to 4 days after they were murdered. So it's a little creepy on that one. But this murder is considered one of the most gruesome and puzzling unsolved crimes in Germany's history.
Well, how do you know that the killer stayed with them for 3 days?
That'll be explained.
We're going to find out.
You got to wait till that comes out.
Well, I want to know now.
Patience.
She's trying to get us excited.
Yes.
Get us interested.
So this family was very well known to be very quiet and kept to themselves. But on April 1st, neighbors became kind of concerned because the young girl missed school, and then the entire family failed to show up to church where Victoria was a member of the choir. So that was kind of when people started to suspect things. And there were some rumors too that, the milkman came and nobody answered, and those kind of things where people stopped by, but they didn't think anything of it. But then when young Kelzea missed school again on April 3rd, and the family's mail began to pile up at the post office, their neighbors decided that it was time to investigate and try to figure out what was going on. And on April 4th, Lorenz Schiltenbarger, who was a farmer who lived nearby, basically their neighbor, led a search party to look for the family and figure out what happened. They ended up finding in the family farm's barn, the search party found 4 of the 6 brutally battered bodies covered in hay inside the barn. And then in the house, they discovered the body of 2-year-old Joseph and the maid Maria Baumgartner. And it was Maria's first day on the job as a maid for the family when this happened.
Oh,
and her sister dropped her off to start her shift and is likely the last person to have seen all 6 of the victims alive. Although she was never a suspect, so I'll just put that out there right now, but she was never a suspect. Maybe unwrongfully, I don't know. But so as the murders, became well known, things, rumors started going around about what could have happened. But it was found out through police investigation that the previous maid had abandoned her position with the family about 6 months prior to this murder because she believed that the house and the farm were haunted, because she constantly heard strange noises and outside of the house and up in the attic of the house. The grandfather, Andreas, he even had mentioned to friends and like neighbors that he had found a newspaper from Munich on the property that he never subscribed to. He didn't know how it got there. He wasn't sure, because that was like 42 miles away. This was in 1922. People didn't travel that far often, kind of thing. So he was kind of concerned about that, but he found that newspaper in March of 1922. So in the weeks leading up to this murder. And then just days before the murder, he actually reported to neighbors that he had discovered tracks in fresh snow that led from a nearby forest on the property to a broken door lock in the family farm's machine room. And so obviously there was somebody that they didn't know who was walking around on the property. And with those the footprints or the trail in the snow, it only led one way. So it wasn't like somebody was walking back and forth. It led from the forest to the barn, and then from the barn to the house. Later on, it was discovered a little bit more. But and then to make it even more creepy, one of the family's 2 house keys, it had disappeared right before the murders happened. So the combination of the footsteps from the woods and the sounds in the attic, and there was also reports of the chimney having smoke coming out of it when the family was known not to be home. They all led to, show that the family was murdered, that somebody was on their property and was an intruder on their property, in their house while they were still there and still alive, and they just didn't realize what it was. So late in the evening of March 31st, it's believed that Victoria, her 7-year-old daughter, Calzelia, and her Victoria's parents, Andreas and the older Calzelia, were lured into the family barn through the stables, where they were murdered one at a time using a mattock, which is basically like an ice pick. But it was a tool that was belonged to the family farm, and it was there in the barn, and that tool was used to have blows to their head. Then after those 4 were murdered in the barn, and then again they were covered in hay, but then it's believed that the murderer went into the house, and using that same weapon, he killed Joseph, who was sleeping in his bassinet or cot next to his mom's bed, and then killed the maid, who was in her own room with that. So it was April 4th was when the bodies were discovered. So 4 days later, from the time of the murders through when they were discovered, that's when it became kind of obvious within those 4 days that somebody had stayed on the property, because all the bodies in the barn were covered in hay. And then Joseph was covered with his mom's dress, one of his mom's dress, and the maid was covered with her sheets. But the weird thing was that there was the farm animals that were on the property, and then there was a Pomeranian watchdog, which I can't imagine a Pomeranian as a watchdog, but a Pomeranian watchdog remained unharmed, had no issues, and actually seemed to be well taken care of in those 4 days since the time of the murders, between when the bodies were found and when the murders are suspected to have happened. So somebody stayed on that property and took care of the animals after they murdered the 6 people, for that. So that's how they found, or that's how they believe that somebody lived with those corpses for the time in between. So there were reports from the family's autopsies that were conducted by a physician, and his name is like Dr. John Baptist Mueller, I think. Again, my accent's going to be really bad with all the German names, but he indicated that the elder Calzelia showed signs of strangulation and 7 blows to the head, which left her with a cracked skull. Her husband, Andreas, he was caked in blood, and his cheekbones were protruding from his shredded flesh from his face. So his face was like just shredded off of his bones. Victoria's skull was also smashed, with her head showing 9 star-shaped wounds to the right side of her face that had been hit with a blunt object. And then the younger Calzelia, her lower jaw had been shattered, and her face and her neck had been covered in gaping circular wounds. So again, that mattock, which is like an ice pick type of tool that was used as the murder weapon. The autopsy, it gets a little sad. The autopsy found that the young daughter, Calzelia, who was again 7, likely remained alive and in shock for several hours after the attack, where her mom and grandparents, it appeared that they died fairly instantly. They believe she stayed alive for several hours because she had ripped her own hair, like chunks of her own hair, out of her head during the like several hours after the fact. I don't know. I couldn't find where they like determined that it was her that ripped it out, but I'm assuming she probably had some in her hands, or something like that. Some kind of like clear evidence on that one, but yeah. So that's where it's pretty sad with that.
Yeah.
There were several theories on like what happened. Most of the suspects were, males. I don't think there was any female suspects that were ever named. But some of them were kind of weird. One of them that I found was weird was they kind of looked at Victoria's husband, which, I forget what his name was. Carl. His name was Carl Gabriel. They looked at him, but she was a widow because he had died in World War I. And and so it's kind of weird, but I'll get into that a little bit more. But there were a lot of theories that happened because Joseph, the 2-year-old, the father of him was not known, and Victoria never fully admitted to who the father of Joseph was. So I'm assuming that her husband must have died before Joseph was born, and given the age gap between the daughter 7, and then Joseph was 2. It kind of makes sense. But it was discovered that Victoria had a relationship with Lorenz Schellenberger, who was the neighbor that started the search party. And actually, a lot of the neighborhood people had stated that both Victoria and Lorenz had publicly referred to Joseph as their child. And there was a rumor that they had planned to get married, but Victoria's father, Andreas, interfered and ended the relationship. So they never got married, but apparently they had a kid together. And then Lorenz ended up eventually going on and marrying somebody else. And him and his wife had a baby who tragically died a few weeks after birth. And so police kind of zeroed in on him as a suspect in the beginning, and theorizing that he was traumatized by the death of his baby. And Victoria was probably looking for child support to pay for Joseph, and he didn't have that money. So he came to the farm and murdered Victoria and her family so that, out of his grief of losing his child and then having to pay child support. And some of this was believed by a lot of the townsfolk because he, again, led that search party. But then once he found the bodies in the barn, he began kind of acting weird and didn't seem overly emotional about it, but then decided to go by himself into the house. And supposedly he was the person that found Joseph and the maid in the house, but he had let himself into the house alone. And so people question, why would you go into the house when there's 4 bodies outside? What makes you want to go into the house alone? But police they ended up really not finding any hard evidence against him, and chalked his reactions up to being like shell shock, basically. Which if the Victoria and he were, in a relationship and weren't able to get married like they wanted to, they may still have had feelings for each other. If you found your loved one in a barn and you had this love child, when you go look for that child as well in the house,
right. That's what I was thinking of.
That's where my mind went. But one of the stories that I read was that the house was locked and he ended up unlocking the house with a key that he owned, which again, a couple days before the murder, a key went missing. And supposedly there was only 2 keys that the family had. But that was also kind of theorized that if they were in a relationship and a neighbor, he was their neighbor, there's a likelihood of he had an extra key as an emergency. And again, because they had that relationship. And if he is really the father of Joseph, it kind of all made sense for that. But once he was kind of eliminated by the police, that's when they started considering Victoria's husband, Carl, as a suspect. And they questioned where he was and, why wasn't he at the house as well? And I think a lot of what them kind of looking at Carl as a suspect is that they didn't realize that he was killed in the war. They just realized that he wasn't home. He wasn't one of the victims. He has to be a suspect kind of a situation. But that theory of him being the killer didn't last long. They quickly discovered that he had been reported to be slain in France during World War I, almost a decade before. So that would, again, kind of make sense where Joseph isn't his kid, because he died almost, I'm assuming, probably about the time she was pregnant with the daughter. And so, but a lot of the soldiers that served with him were testing that they saw him be killed in France, and they saw his dead body. Like, they all confirmed that he was dead. Another theory that kind of floated around was that Joseph was actually the child of Victoria and her father, Andreas. And that was that one of the theory was that one of them had killed the entire family before killing themselves with the medic. But none of the injuries with the autopsy, none of the injuries to the bodies could really explain a self-inflicted injury, especially a fatal injury. So that kind of got swept aside as well. It didn't make sense for it to be a murder-suicide situation. However, that was something that was looked at pretty heavily because there were neighborhood rumors that went around. We talked about this in one of our podcasts last week or the week before, where apparently he was sexually abusive to Victoria. The father was sexually abusive to Victoria, and it was well known in the community and talked about in hushed tones, and kind of one of those things. So it is possible, especially because she never publicly announced who the father was. It is possible that Joseph was actually Andrea's son, and not grandson, kind of a situation. And there was also, it was well known that the elder Calzelia and Anders had other children beyond Victoria, but they all died before reaching adulthood, and it was rumored that his sexual abuse with them was part of the reason why they didn't survive through it to adulthood. So that was one of the theories as well too. I don't think it was like a real true theory. It's just one of the sadder parts of the story that likely is true. But there was no real, because the whole family was killed, there was really no evidence to say otherwise. So nothing to really prove on that one either. In all, though, over the years, there's been more than 100 suspects that were questioned by the police and about the farm and the murders. And this included a mixture of local people and people who had been traveling through the area at the time. And there was nothing that the police were able to find that really caught their attention or caused any like red flags to go up. That like once people were questioned, the police's theories on what happened and who the suspect was pretty quickly eliminated. So I think that's why over 100 years, it's still one of the most unsolved mysteries in Germany. About 30 years, and there's again 100 suspects, but about 30 years after the murders, there was some rumors that happened and new theories that came about, and they thought that the case may actually be solved. It was a woman named Karencia Mayer who told her priest that on her deathbed that her two brothers had been responsible for the slaughter of the family, and the men were actually questioned as one of those or two of those 100 suspects, and it was Adolf and Anton Gump, and that's like those were kind of like the bigger theories, but the brothers had died before the sister, and so they couldn't re-question them, and it kind of fell flat after that. But through the years, they had several people kind of doing that, which I think is kind of on par for murder mysteries, that like unsolved things where people admit that they killed somebody and then evidence proves that they really didn't. So, but it's one of those things that we'll just like never really know. The case, again, this happened on May 31st, 1922. This has been over 100 years now. We're in 2023. So just over 100 years. And throughout the years, the case has been closed and reopened several times. A lot of times, like the police departments, the new, like fresh police officers, they want to reopen the cold case and try to see if they can figure things out. But really they don't get really anywhere either. There's an author, Peter Leischner. He details, and the title of the book he has is all in German. I don't know what it says, to be honest. I don't know, and I didn't do a translation, but the mysteries of the family. I don't know. I can see the mysteries. That's about all I can read. But he wrote a book about this and detailed how the bodies of the family and the maid were actually beheaded not long after the original autopsies, because their skulls were sent off to Munich, where they were examined for metaphysical clues. But, again, this was back in 1922, and I don't think that science was far enough along to be able to discover too much out of there, and they didn't really gather anything from that. And then in 1923, the farm was actually demolished, and the family was laid to rest in a cemetery nearby that farm, and without their heads. They never got their heads back because the heads were actually lost during all the chaos in Germany during World War II. So they were laid to rest without their heads in a nearby cemetery. And today there's a monument that stands where the farm used to be, and it kind of it's a memorialization of the victims. And then the latest that I could find was in 2007. The Fürstenfeldbruck Police Academy took on this as a cold case. And because they were with new technology, they were trying to find some new, relatively basic forensic technology things that we have now, if they could use those to find any new evidence really that couldn't have been discovered back then, and look at the original investigation. But they weren't able to conclusively identify a murderer, but they did have a theory that the whole team had agreed upon. But out of the respect of the surviving family members of the people who were related to the crime, they never released what the theory was. So that theory still remains a secret. And at this point, the story, I think everybody has just kind of come to the point of it's unlikely that we'll ever know the answers to it, even if they're there. In 2007, the police have this theory, but so much, it's been over 100 years that likely nothing will ever come of it. And even with the new technologies we have, the evidence is likely not good enough to be able to get 100% accurate results on any of the answers. So that's the story.
Wow.
Kind of short and sweet, I guess, but
yeah,
not sweet.
No, it's not sweet.
Poor family.
Very sad, kind of eerie, kind of a sad situation, really sad situation, but it kind of makes you wonder. I mean, my theory on this is that it was likely somebody. Well, I guess I didn't get into this. So they kind of thought, oh, this must be somebody that's just going through the community and found this older couple with a young daughter, or a daughter in their 30s with young kids. So an easy target to be able to murder and rob and all that kind of stuff. But the police found nothing had been stolen. There was money near where Joseph was in the bedroom, so there was a lot of money, so nothing was really disturbed in the house or in the barn. It was just the crime. So my kind of theory is either it was a traveler who was passing through the community that maybe is a serial killer that never got caught, kind of a situation, or it was, there's so much hate in the world, but it was somebody that Victoria was a widow who had a 2-year-old that she wouldn't claim who the father was. So she's unmarried with a second child. And so I had a second child out of wedlock, kind of a situation. Mm-hmm. Could it have been somebody in the community that wanted to kill her for her sins that she and killed the whole family.
Who were the two that were covered up with blanket, did you say?
So Victoria and her 2 parents, and then her daughter, her 7-year-old daughter, were all out in the barn, and they were buried in hay. So they weren't buried, but they were covered in hay. And then Joseph, the 2-year-old, and the maid were covered in the house. So Joseph was covered by one of Victoria's dresses in his bassinet or in his, bed cot. And then the maid was covered with her sheets that were on her bed.
Isn't that odd?
Yeah.
That was like the story we did on the Robinsons. Like, 2 of the people they put blankets on. Well,
right.
You murdered a whole family, but you have compassion to put blankets on.
Well,
I think this one, it was because they stayed in the house. Yes. And so they didn't want to see the bodies.
That's where I kind of thought too, is that they stayed in the house. And because the search party started on the 4th, the person that murdered them likely said, oh, I can't stay in this house anymore. And so they skedaddled real quick or joined in the search party so that they wouldn't be a suspect kind of a situation. And, but that's what I kind of took it as, is that they covered everybody so they didn't have to see what they did. But, or, this could be a situation where it was a guy that was in love with Victoria and she turned him down and, he said, well, you already have a 2-year-old out of wedlock. You're a whore. And I'm going to show you what it means, So like somebody that was obsessively in love with her kind of a situation.
Right.
And they killed her whole family because she denied him.
Yeah. So, scorned man.
Yeah. Right. So, I mean, I don't know. And again, maybe it was the maid's sister who dropped her off, that was mad at the maid and said, hey, I'm going to take it out on your employer too. But that kind of seems like a stretch as well too. But you never know. I mean, look what's going on in today's world. People just decide to kill whoever they want.
Yeah.
So,
no reason behind it.
All right. Well, and I think so. Jess, you said this theory with the traveler, which is actually a theory that's very common in this case. It's the man from the train theory.
Yes, that's what this is. Yeah.
So there was a serial killer in America between the years, let me see, 1898 and 1912, named Paul Mueller, who was a German immigrant. And his crimes was basically he traveled around America, train by train, city to city, and basically killed entire families like this in the same kind of motive, where it's like he killed them with an axe or a blunt object, and they think that he was getting the police were getting closer and closer to him in America, so he traveled to Germany and basically committed this crime. So there's that theory that it was basically this Paul Mueller guy.
Yes, and that is one of the theories that was on there too, and I did see that. And the author Bill James, in his book The Man from the Train, that's where it was. He kind of claims that Paul Mueller is the murderer for this. Yep.
Huh.
There's also, I think, let me see, I just saw it, but another reason they thought somebody was living in the house after the people had died was because one of their neighbors, I think, trying to read it off here quick. One of their neighbors saw smoke from the chimney.
Yes.
And then walked up to the house, and somebody opened the door, but they had a gas lamp that they had really, really bright, and they couldn't see the actual person who was holding it. And they were just I think they said that the person just scared them away, kind of.
Yeah, I did see that. I read that and then I forgot about it. So
yeah. This is one of my interesting cases that I think is just so every theory seems right.
Right. And and with this one too, I think because it happened in 1922, that, again, it's this kind of stuff wasn't common to happen. So police didn't think, and, you thought you lived in a safe community, that kind of stuff. So, and then it's you don't, I don't know. I just think that some of this stuff is I don't want to say it was lazy police work, because I think in 1922, it wouldn't have been considered lazy police work, but it's things that we think of now, why wouldn't the police have picked up on that kind of stuff? That, but that's what I kind of feel it was a traveler, that they're a nomad person, and I need a place to stay. I'm going to murder this family and stay there until for as long as I can, and then move on to the next place.
Yeah.
So,
the train guy you were talking about, Cass.
Yeah.
Did they ever catch up with him, and did he have any explanation on why he would kill a whole family?
Well, I mean, this was again back in like 1912 was his last murder in the United States. So that's the last known murder that he conducted. He basically went missing after that.
Which again kind of would make sense because back then too, it's like think about like the people that came. I'm just thinking like the movie Titanic with Rose when she came over to Ellis Island. She said her name was Rose Dawson, which is not her real last name. But you know, I mean, you don't want to say people were changing their names, but it would have been easier to like create a whole new identity for yourself back then.
Right.
But what was his? Did they ever find out what his? Why kill families? I mean, what was it?
Let me see if I can look it up real quick. I don't know if it said anything, but there's like mentions of like necrophilia, which makes sense for staying in a house with dead bodies.
Yeah. And for this family, for the Gerber family, I didn't see anywhere like where the women were raped or the men were raped. You know, like I didn't see any of that kind of stuff. But and it looked like from the autopsies, it was just the head injuries.
Well, that's crazy.
Yeah. It is.
But that's what, okay, yeah. So Paul Mueller is, I'm just looking at Wikipedia real quick, is alleged early 20th century serial killer responsible for between 40 and 100 deaths in the United States and in Germany. So with that, and that's based on that Bill James book too, but with that information, to me, that could be a clear indication of that's who killed the family. And then you got to think too, like, again, Victoria's husband died during World War I, World War II, you know, started in, I don't know, for like Germany, you know, like the war could have started earlier than, you know, but like in the 1940s. So, you know, like 15 years after this murder, you know, then things are easy, like their heads went missing, you know, so clear evidence clearly could have been destroyed.
Right.
It does say, I'm reading here, that most of the murders that he is contributed to may have been due to a sadistic sexual attraction to prepubescent girls. A lot of the murder crime scenes, the young girls had more defensive wounds and evidence of struggle, and that the police at the time had found multiple occasions of ejaculations at the crime scene. But again, it doesn't sound like these bodies at the Hinterkaifeck had that, but also it would make sense that he was like watching the family, because if the maid 6 months before was saying that there's clearly like something going on in the house, I'm hearing noises in the attic, and you have 3 women, you know, you have the maid, Victoria, and then the mother, as well as the younger daughter.
And then
you have just kind of been preying on
father
them.
Who was in his mid 60s, which back in 1922 was old, like super old.
Right.
So, yeah. So it's like, to me, that would be like, oh, that's like a perfect target, you know, easy to do. But I read too that Bill James indicated that his theory behind Paul Mueller being the murderer of this case is because it matched, like you already said this, Cassie, but it matched a lot of the similarities to the crimes that happened in the United States, including the slaughter of an entire family in their isolated home. The bodies were moved after they were killed, and a young girl was among one of the victims. And there was a use of the blunt edge of a farm tool as the weapon. And in this case, it was the mattock, which is a pickaxe. And then there was the apparent absence of a robbery as a motive. So that kind of like, it checks all the boxes for
Right. The
Germany case.
similarities.
Yeah. So.
I guess I never heard of a serial killer that went after families.
Yeah. I don't know. To each its own, I guess. But the Paul Mueller is a German immigrant anyway, so he, may have just went to the United States for a period of time and then was coming back home and continued on his killing streak in Germany. Yeah.
Wow. Crazy.
Yep. So I thought it was a pretty interesting little information that was provided in my new calendar, and
Yeah,
I thought it was a good story. But yeah, I did think too that this was like our third week in a row of a whole family being murdered. So
yeah, but I mean, this is like one of the biggest true crime mysteries kind of ones.
Yeah, right.
And also it's just that idea of like they show clear signs that the killer stayed in the barn, and basically one by one they came to the barn by themselves, and he murdered them until the next one came. And so that's like so strange that like they each were like, well, I'll go check it out. Now I'll go check it out. Now I'll go check it out.
Well,
and that kind of makes you think that maybe it was the neighbor, because he'd have access to get into the barn, and
it's a barn.
Go back home.
Yeah, and I kind of think of it as the daughter, Calzelia. She was 7, but again, 1922, you required your young kids to do actual like labor. And so she probably had a chore of, you got to go and, feed the animals at nighttime, or bring them into the, like Matt's parents have chickens. You got to bring them in, or like lock them up in the coop at the end of the night. So she probably went out to the barn to do her nightly chores. Then one of the adults heard her scream, went out to investigate. And then then one of the say Victoria went in to investigate, and then she didn't come back. So then her parents are like, oh, they've been out there for a long time. Maybe I should go look. And, oh, they've been out there for a long time. What's going on? I think I should go look. And, that makes sense to me. Where it was just like a chain reaction of what's going on kind of thing.
Right.
So, and then the maid and Joseph were asleep. But that makes sense too, where Joseph's a 2-year-old, like most 2-year-olds go to bed at like 7:30, 8 o'clock, whatever. Right. And then the maid likely goes to bed fairly early too, because she wakes up earlier than everybody else to do things around the house.
Right.
Prepare for everybody else. So.
But then you got to think about like, nobody would have screamed. Like she wouldn't have heard any of them scream.
Right.
There would have been the neighbors didn't hear anything. I mean, not the neighbors are close, but
right, yeah, and that's what I think it said in one of the articles that I read like how far away the one neighbor was, but it's like a mile away. It's very secluded and like, off by its own. And even with like the barn, it could have been far enough away where you didn't hear that noise, or. Maybe she was already asleep when all this kind of happened and stuff too. So
lots of barn noises happening, maybe.
Yeah. And that's something too, like there's owls that sound like babies crying, so like maybe it's something that like, oh, it's just an owl. Yeah, I've heard an owl that sounds like somebody crying for help.
Well, and also cats train themselves to sound like babies.
Yeah. Right.
To be domesticated.
Yeah. So I don't know. I thought it was kind of interesting.
Mysterious.
But it is. That's what I started when I was reading it. It's one of Germany's most unsolved, like weird unsolved mysteries, and it is a pretty popular one. Never been solved. Nobody really has been confirmed to be the killer.
So we need a forensic team to get these.
Well, the thing that again, this happened in 1922. That's
I know,
over 100 years ago. So
it's
really,
hard.
the evidence that could have been available is likely not there. It's just
right.
not.
It's gone.
Yeah. So. And again, like you had World War II afterwards, where parts of Germany that were there in 1922 no longer exist. They're not there anymore. You know, that's where like Matt's grandfather came from Prussia, which is no longer even part of Germany. So. So, yeah, it just kind of, a lot of the evidence that could have been there may have been destroyed, and
right.
We'll never know.
Right.
Well,
that's that.
All right. Anything else you want to add to that?
No, I can't talk very well today. I apologize.
Well, it's that time. So
yes, it's getting time.
Wrap things up. So, anybody else got anything they want to add?
Mm-mm.
No. All right, guys.
So you don't think it was?
Yeah. Get back to the ghost.
You know, they said that it was.
It wasn't haunted. That's the thing. No. The maid quit because she thought it was haunted, but really, so that's something too. Is that say it was this Paul Mueller, but whoever it was, likely. Oh, and I wanted to bring this up too, but likely was like living in the attic or living on the property unknown to the family for 6 months before it happened, and kind of watching and getting what their habits were, and what their just kind of watching everything, and knew how to time it. And that's something too that he probably, or the person that murdered him, knew how to get everybody out into the barn one at a time. Right. So that's something too. So it was there's really never any hauntings. There was just a lot of things that happened that couldn't be explained. That again, hindsight is 20/20, where you think about it and then, oh, that makes more sense.
Because remember, they found the footprints in the snow leading up to the house.
Right.
That went to the house but never left the house.
Right. Yeah.
And the key was stolen.
And the key was stolen, and so that was that. But there is I don't know if it's like a fad or whatever, but it is like a thing where like young people, like in their like college age, like late teens, early 20s, maybe older than that. I forget what it's called, but they watch people's habits, and then they're nomads and break into people's houses and live in their houses while they're out to work, or, and then they sleep in the houses, and they just like stay silent. And so they live in people's houses unknown to the people. And like while the people are at work, they roam around the house and like live in the house like it's theirs. And then they remain like hidden in the house and silent while the family's at home. And they don't mean it in a malicious way. It's just that's
rent's expensive.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And it's like a real kind of thing of like, oh, I'm not going to get caught kind of thing. I forget what it's called.
No, Mom could never do that.
No. But it's, like it's
I
one of
want
those.
to.
I forget what it's called, but it's like, it's not,
I didn't know it was like a thing.
Term. Yeah.
I knew there was like cases where it's happened before. I just didn't realize that there was a fad.
So, but I think, and that's what, like, it could have, I don't know. I mean, in this case, I don't think it would have been something like that. I mean, kind of similar. They were like living there without the family knowing, but there was malicious intent, I think, on this one all along. So,
yeah.
Yep. Anything else, Mom?
Well, I just, I thought about that ghost part, and we never really went back over it.
I'm sorry. I thought it was like kind of clear once we got down to the nitty gritty of everything. There was no ghost.
Okay.
No real ghost.
No real ghost.
No real ghost. All right.
It's just one of those things. Like if you hear things up in your attic.
I hear things all the time in this house.
Exactly.
I smell things.
Look at your house. You have 2 huge attics. Somebody's probably living up there.
No, there's nobody in there.
2 huge attics that have pure clear clear access into the house without going outside.
Yeah.
You can't get into the house in those attics.
You can.
No, you can't.
There's a door in my old bedroom.
Yeah.
A door.
I know, but it goes out to the attic, but you can't get into the attic from outside the house.
Well, you can. Let's not explain that online. But you can.
I was thinking that. Let's not get into this.
We don't want people just to, all of a sudden start living up in your attic.
Of course, it would explain a lot of things.
Yeah.
You should check your attic. Put a little Nest Cam up in your attic.
They got all kinds of stuff to do up there too, because you got old books, old trinkets.
There's a bed in there.
Yeah, see, there you go.
Odin's old bed or Danielle's old bed is in there.
Yep. You got it made. You're making it easy for them.
It is kind of like one of those attics you see on TV where they have all that old, stuff in there.
Yeah.
Old trunk.
Find a Christmas present that was forgotten about, like the Griswolds.
No.
I haven't been up there in years. We should go up there and check it out.
Probably old school projects. My old, map of the town that I did in like 4th grade.
All the stuff we've been looking for years.
Yep. It's all up there.
All right, guys. Let's get this wrapped up. Any last words? Anybody? Okay. Nope. All right. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us. Yeah. Please like, share, and subscribe our site. We're trying to build it. And every time you push that like button, that helps us out. And, of course, give us your suggestions and your thoughts on our email at thefamilyschoolofthought@gmail.com. Cash, you got anything to add to that?
Nope. It looks like we're getting a lot of views per episode, so that's amazing. So subscribe would be even better. But it looks like a lot of you are watching, which is great.
Yes. Awesome.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye. Alexa played the Family School of Thought.